Hey guys, this is Nick Kritzers from Mob Tales. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We're very happy to have almost 60 shows so far, which is pretty awesome. Please like, share, and subscribe and comment when you can. And today we have a very interesting guest, Stratis Morfogenis, which is the proper way to say it. He's a restaurateur. He's done a lot of interesting things, and we have a lot of interesting questions to ask him. Stratis, thanks again. Thanks a lot for coming on the show. We appreciate it. Sorry for the little technical difficulty earlier.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, like the question I asked earlier, and you were explaining how you became involved in the restaurant business at the very young age of 6 years old.
Yeah, I knew what I wanted to do at age 6. I literally from the age of 6 to 17, I never had a weekend off. I worked in the restaurants, it's something I knew I wanted. I knew I wanted it from every aspect of the hospitality industry. I loved the Fulton Fish Market. I loved going on a truck with my dad and going to the Fulton Fish Market, the meat market, the vegetable market. I took that over Disney World as a 6 to 10-year-old kid.
Wow.
And it's true. I actually rejected a trip to Disney World because I knew my dad had the truck that week, and I wanted to go to the Fulton Fish Market because that was my Disney World.
Well, that's, as a matter of fact, the Fulton Fish Market, you put that on the map in 1997, if I'm 97, correct? On the internet.
You did your homework. Yeah, I brought the Fulton Fish Market on the internet in 1997, and I owned it by a little thing called search engine optimization. And this is before Google. I was doing it on Excite, Yahoo, and AOL, and I won over the market pretty strong. We went from 2 employees to 185 employees, and that was it. I basically was buying fish at the market, packaging it, and shipping it out airmail.
That's pretty cool. So you're the first what do you call you're the first Amazon almost.
You know what? One of my partners owned a big sporting goods company, and I told him, if you don't take this thing called the internet seriously, there's a company called Amazon that sells books, and I hear they're going into toys and sporting goods. They're going to eat your lunch if you don't get your 95 sporting goods stores used as same-day delivery vehicles, especially in those 80 markets. And he looked at me and he said, no one's going to buy a T-shirt or a glove, a baseball glove off a computer. I said, you're going to be out of business in 20 years. I'm not going to mention the name, but
Yeah,
a
yeah.
$1 billion company, he filed bankruptcy 24 years later.
Wow, look at that. Well, you were 100% correct, it seems. You were also involved in places like the Hilltop Diner, which I used to go to, no less.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Way back when, many moons ago. And in reference to the restaurant business, and because my father was in the restaurant business too, as a fellow Greek, that's pretty much what most of us did.
Yeah.
Being that the restaurant business the way it is, it's evolved a lot over the years. What differences do you see from, let's say, 30 years ago till now?
Well, I sold my last diner, which was Gotham Diner and the Hilltop Diner, in 2004. And I swore I would never go back into the diner business. And since then, I opened about 100 Asian-inspired restaurants, from Philippe Chow, Brooklyn Chop House, Brooklyn Dumpling Shop, Julon. And what happened is that I started studying why all these diners are closing. One is the next generation doesn't want it. The other one is the real estate became so valuable, they sold it to developers. But the most interesting part why they were closing is they said that there's no more foot traffic. And what I tried to explain to my dad's generation, which they just couldn't capture it, they couldn't understand it, is that foot traffic is overrated. You don't need foot traffic anymore. The real foot traffic is your Google, Yelp, Instagram, Facebook, marketing, advertising, and reviews. Because 90% of the people make their decision where they're going to eat before they leave their home or office or hotel.
That's true.
And I tried to explain that to them, and they just didn't understand it. foot traffic, location. And I said, it doesn't matter anymore. Because if you get a video going viral on TikTok, like we just did at Diner 24, you could own a treehouse in the Bronx and it's going to be packed, as just as it's going to be on Madison Avenue in Midtown. It's all about digital footprint. And I knew there was an opportunity watching all my dad's generation diners closing. I knew the opportunity was to take search engine optimization analytics and digital marketing seriously. And I started studying this location here that was called the Lyric Diner for 30 years.
Oh,
The
yeah.
owner handed me the keys. And everybody said, why are you doing a 24-hour diner? They're all closing. I said, because people don't understand the digital footprint that you need to be successful. And what I basically said was, if you can get your online digital platform with the right content, exciting content, unique content, you'll be able to fill your restaurant up with one viral video. Since I've opened Diner 24 2 months, I have gotten about 7 viral videos, from my milkshakes to the Greek salad in a jar and what have you. 9 million views on TikTok alone. And my restaurant went from like 1,500 covers a week to 6,000 covers a week. And we're in the worst time of the year. We're in the middle of July. And our numbers keep growing because of all the activity we're getting on social media. So with that said, when you study analytics at my location, there's 1 million people a month searching 24-hour diner, 24-hour breakfast, 24-hour burger, late night snack, 24-hour eats. So hence, when we came down to writing what the name is going to be, I said, it's like the AAA plumbing of 19th century in the yellow pages. It's called Diner 24. And that's what's going to pop up when you search. And that's exactly what's happened here. We've basically taken a little tiny business that never did more than 2,000 people a month to 6,000 people a week, just
Wow.
because of digital footprints. Yeah, we have good foot traffic here, but I still believe all those people walking, they've already made their decision where they're going based on online reviews, content, and social media.
That's a good thought. It's a good point. That is true. You're right. It's definitely true.
My dad's version of technology was my mother on a Casio register that he bought from Staples, sitting behind the registers. That was my dad's high-tech approach to marketing.
Sounds like my father. Yeah, pretty much. Even though my dad's out of that business
Yeah.
a long time. But you were also involved in a nightclub as well. If I remember the name of it, shoot, what was the name? Oh, gee, I'm trying to remember now. It was
I'm sorry, you said very involved in what? I couldn't hear what you said, so I can't help you.
no, it's all right. It was you were involved in a nightclub as well.
Oh yeah, Rouge nightclub, Rouge.
Rouge, that's it. No,
Yeah, I had
recall the
3
name.
nightclubs. I had Obar, Cessa, and Rouge nightclub was my first one 30 years ago last month.
Now, since you're still involved in the food business, would you say the nightclub business is not what it used to be, obviously?
Yeah, well, when my kids started, when my kids started becoming toddlers and starting school, that's when I knew that this nightclub business is not good for a father that's involved with his children. So I started unloading everything, and I was done with the nightclub business in 2005.
Ah, okay. Well, in reference to the nightlife in general, I mean, in your opinion, in your own opinion, if you were able to do that, would you approach that idea again, or?
No, the nightclub business has been ruined by greedy and selfless promoters. It's a very promoter-driven business, and what they do is they come in, they rip your business apart, they take their 20% off the top, and then 9 months or a year they go to the next hotspot, and they leave you with a pile of shit.
Interesting point.
No, the nightclub business is not great, and also the insurance and the liquor law liability has gotten out of control. It's almost like what doctor tells their kids that to become a doctor just based on the insurance. In the nightclub, the liquor law liability is up 500%, And that's a shame because it really shouldn't be. Because, now we got Ubers and Lyfts out there. With Uber and Lyft, especially in the suburbs, they should be lowering the liquor law liability because people have access to a 24-hour chauffeur.
Ah, interesting point. Um, you also had the interesting opportunity of writing books. You have two books that are out.
Yeah, one is called Damn Good Dumplings, which I
Right.
took about 60 traditional diner classics and I made them into dumplings, aka pig in a blanket for sandwiches. And
Yeah,
the other one is called Be a Disruptor.
be a
And Be a
disruptor. Right.
Disruptor is basically my version or my journey of my entrepreneurial journey, and it's basically the unorthodox approach to education and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I'm very interested in more about that book and your views on those two specific items you just mentioned. Can you elaborate just a little bit?
Yeah, so Be a Disruptor is basically my journey. My journey is basically growing up in the family business, leaving at age 18, and going off on my own. And I went into the world of Manhattan. It's a it's a long distance from Garden City, Long Island, and all of a sudden you're in a completely different league. And I became like the Forrest Gump of nightclubs at 23 years old. I own the hottest nightclub by mistake, and you know, I, I thought I was the king of the hill, and I thought that nothing could go wrong until I had a couple of wise guys trying to shake me down, because back in the day in the 80s and 90s, if you had a serious alcohol business, you had to pay a mob tax, and I
Hmm.
refused to do so, and that was a different level of a different level of challenges that I've never ever could have read out of a book. But I stood my ground, and I had a lot of issues with like guys like John Gotti Jr., who was
Right,
shaking everybody down, and I basically told him to go fuck himself.
right. I know that story, as a matter of fact, pretty well. But you did have some help. You had two
Yeah,
guys
so well,
that,
I had two versions of help. One is the three biggest judges in New York were my aunts and uncles. So I thought that would be enough for them to leave me alone, but it wasn't. They started throwing black paint on my windows. They started beating up my managers. Actually, all the guys that ratted on Junior were the guys that were beating up my managers, and they were just a bunch of thugs, real thugs. And that's why I mentioned them by name in their book, because they got to be called out for what they were. They were destroying small businesses out of their greed, and one day at Gotham Diner, when I was sorry, I'm outside and there's a siren going by me. New York City, baby, New York City. Um, One day I was outside cleaning black paint off my windows, and Barney Belomo and Ralph Coppola, the boss and street boss and underboss of the Genovese family,
yeah, I know it is.
they would come to my diner, Gotham Diner, as customers. They were my friends. And then Ralph all of a sudden says, "Hey, nephew," that's what he called me, nephew.
Yeah.
He says, "What's going on here? What is this black paint? I see you cleaning like 3 times a month." I said, "Well, they're trying to shake me down." He's like, "Oh," I said, "Junior." So it was very simple. He said, "Hang tight," and he goes, uh, check your phone in the next few hours. Hang tight, but be by your phone." A few hours later, I get a text message, and the message is, well, it might have been a beeper. It's 1994, and he said, "Go to Ferrier Restaurant on
There's
65th
restaurant.
Street,"
Mhm.
and that restaurant was a big Gambino hangout.
It
And
was
when I got there, they were my friends. I loved Danny and Joe Watts and Tough Tony. All those guys were my friends. And when I got there, it was Barney, Ralph, myself, and basically 5 capos of the Genovese family with their attorney, Joel Winograd, who I loved very much till his death. Great, great guy. And those guys were pretty surprised when I sat down with Barney and Ralph, and Ralph said, "Hey, he's my nephew. He's around us." I didn't know I was around anyone, but I guess so. He's around us, and we need Junior to back off. And then within minutes, Danny and Joe, like, we like this guy. This kid's a good kid. We love going to his spots. We'll take care of it. It'll be squash. Consider it done. And make a long story short, um, never heard from John the Thug Jr. again. Never heard from any of his cohorts. And then one day when we were at Ferrier, one of the guys that beat up one of my managers was there with his girlfriend. And I pointed out to one of Ralph's soldiers. His name was Bucky. I said, "Look, that's the guy that beat up my manager." And then they walked up to him and they grabbed him by the back of the neck like an ugly cat that he is. And they said, you know what? Ever go near this kid again, you're going to deal with us. And I'm going to be the last face you see. And then they made him crawl in a crowded dining room, bark like a dog to beg for forgiveness for ever trying to do that to my business. And then on top of it, they said, "We expect you to go back to his business and start paying and start doing a lot of business there. And you're going to make up for all the harassment you did to our golden Greek," is what they called me.
Yes, I remember.
And basically that was it. It was squashed. And then from there on, these guys were my, like, they were my brothers. They were my friends they were my friends before. I'll tell you how good these guys were. Right after all this was squashed, they came to Gotham Diner. The check, I think, was $100. And just out of gratefulness, I took the check. And then they called me over with like a look like he was so angry, Ralph and Barney. And they said, "Put the check down." I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Give me a break. It's a little token of saying thank you, man. You helped me so much." And he goes, we did it out of friendship. Put the check down. We didn't do it for that. We did it to support you. We're here for you. And make sure any of my guys come here, they pay their check. Put the check down." That's what kind of guys they were. They were, part of the moral of Be a Disruptor was I was partners with the Fortune 500 Wharton CEO types. I had to fight the politicians during COVID. And you know what? At the end of the day, I was partners and friends with the mob. And if I had to pick one partner all over again, it would be the mob.
Yeah, it was Ralph Coppola, correct?
What's that?
It was Ralph Coppola, correct?
Yeah, Ralph became my adopted uncle. And unfortunately, he passed the day before my wedding, and I found out about it by his empty chair.
Oh, wow, that sucks.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
But I mean, in reference to, I'm not sure how many, I'm sure you've dealt with some Greek guys, especially in the restaurant business. Is it now a lot of the diners or restaurants that Greeks used to own are now owned by Spanish people, different ethnic groups are coming in. Do you see that happening as well?
Listen, I still think the Greeks have a stranglehold on the diner. And my father used to say, "Paito mialotu," when I left the diner business and I opened Chinese restaurants. But then I showed him a 20% food cost instead of his 35% food cost at the diner. And his answer to me was, "Focus. This is a good business. Focus on Chinese."
That's very interesting. That's a big difference.
All about numbers.
But your restaurants were not, if I'm correct, they weren't strictly Greek based. They were like
No, most of them weren't. Most of my restaurants are Chinese.
Right, that's pretty interesting. Greek guy running Chinese restaurants. I mean,
That's what my father said. Like, for your non-Greek followers, "Paito mialotu" means my son lost his mind.
Lost his mind. Yeah, exactly. But in any other aspects besides restaurants and clubs, have you ever looked into anything else to invest in, let's say, in the film world, for example?
I always focus on what I know best. I never, it's funny. I've got, it's a funny story. I got all my life, I got all these money managers that try to say, "Hey, I can give you these returns, this and that." I've been managing my own money without help. I have a Schwab split account. I have Amazon, Tesla, Procter and Gamble, um, Apple, and Carnival Cruise Lines for the last 20 years. And let me tell you, I beat the S&P 500, and I bet I beat the biggest hedge fund guys because a few of my stocks are up 30,000% in 20 years.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. Oh, well,
Yeah.
if you were to give somebody, a young guy getting out of college, or any young guy or girl, lady, who wants to do, kind of like what you've done, for somebody who wants to be an entrepreneurial spirit, who has that in their mind, what advice would you give them?
You have to embrace failure. If you can't stomach failure, you're never going to succeed. Failure is part of the journey. Failure is part of the education, and that's what Be a Disruptor was all about. It is an inspiration book, but it also you have to address failure, and you're going to have to fail on the way. And not everybody can stomach failure. Not everybody can get that gut punch and come back. But if you can't do that, that's the true test of an entrepreneur. The true test of an entrepreneur is the bounce back, is what you've learned from that failure, is what you've learned from when you fell on your face and how you returned and how you got back. That's the test of a true entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is not just, hey, and a disruptor. Like, for example, everything in my life I've disrupted. I've taken businesses that you think are traditional, and I've applied it in a new way. I've dismantled it. I've reimagined it. I've rebuilt it. And when you disrupt things, you got to remember the propensity for failure is even higher. But if you hit it and it works, you're never going to hit a single or a double. You're going to hit a bases loaded grand slam with 2 outs in the ninth inning with 2 strikes, because that's what disruption means. You're doing something, you're re-changing something, and you're reimagining it, and you're reintroducing it to the society, to the public, to the consumer. And either they're going to laugh in your face and it's going to be a monumental failure, or it's going to be a blockbuster. There's no singles and doubles in disrupting. And that's why I've had many failures. But when I hit a success, it's never a single or a double. It's grand slam or a bust.
Wow. Well, just one last thing. Because Manhattan has been hurt a lot, in the sense of crime and this and that, things, it's not as big. A lot of people have left Manhattan because of what's been going on. Yeah, I mean, has that affected you? Did that concern you at all?
I will tell you that I'm a hardened New Yorker, and I will tell you, I've had my battles with the government, especially during COVID. I was
Mhm.
a regular on Fox. I was on Tucker Carlson 3 times. I told Governor Hochul to arrest me. I'm not going to fire my staff a jab for the job. I was the only one that was defiant. I told one of the captains of the precinct, let me know where you want me to go. I'm not firing my staff. A bunch of them don't have vaccine cards, which is like as good as my 1984 driver's license that I can print in my bedroom printer and write it in pen, because you guys gave us all the tools to fail. But I'm not going to tell that young man that he has to get a 3rd vaccine because he just got COVID or he got 1 vaccine or whatever. It's not my business. I'm not going to tell that man or that young kid to get a vaccine. I'll tell you why I'm not going to do it. In March 2020 to June 2020, me and my team fed over 9,000 healthcare workers. And I don't say workers, I say healthcare heroes. I fed me and my team fed 9,000 healthcare heroes. And these kids could have made a little bit less money and stay home and get unemployment, because unemployment was like $900 a week. But they decided that they wanted to help the healthcare heroes. And from March to July, we serviced almost 8,900 to be exact, healthcare meals of
Wow.
lobsters, steaks, chicken, vegetables, you name it. It wasn't just like, a macaroni and cheese. And what happened was in March 2020, New York Post gave us Hero of the Day, which I said, we're not the heroes. These people, forget about doctors and nurses. You got the janitorial and the maid staff changing beds of patients that just died. And at the end of their shift, they're going home to their families. They're my hero. And we kept on feeding them and throwing some bottles of wine in there. I think it was that Beth Israel called me and said, "Hey, we so much appreciate these packages delivered in SUVs, big ass packages. Can you just stop with the wine?" I said, okay, I'll stop. I doubled up the wine. I said, fuck you. I said, you know what? Let them have a glass of wine at the end of their shift. And then they started posting it on Instagram, like Brooklyn Chop House, thank you. And I got to tell you, that's going to be something that I'm going to take to my grave and tell my grandchildren about. During the pandemic of 2020, we fed all the healthcare heroes. We did it on our dime. And then on top of it, I told government to go fuck themselves. I told the government to basically, I'm not firing anyone. I was completely defiant, and they never arrested me. Even Tucker Carlson said to Governor Hochul, "Please arrest him so we can send our cameras. It'll make a great clip."
Yeah. So that's basically
at the end of the day, I just hate I hate politicians. Hate them. They never ran a small business. They never ran a lemonade stand. They never created private sector jobs. And all of a sudden, they're making small business decisions for us. So I never fired any of my staff, or I never closed after spring of 2020. I did in the beginning. I closed like everybody else. But after spring of 2020, I never reclosed again.
so that's classic disruptor right there.
Yep.
Well, if you just to close out the show, if you can tell us where people can, go check out your restaurants, especially Diner 24. That's
Yes.
where would that be in Manhattan?
Diner 24 is at 283 3rd Avenue on 3rd Avenue and 22nd Street. And then my Brooklyn Chop Houses are downtown Fidei at 150 Nassau. And the other one is in the heart of Times Square. And my third location is in Abu Dhabi at the W Hotel.
Oh, very nice. Awesome. Okay, well, great. Stratis, thank you very much for coming on the show. I know you're very busy, but we definitely appreciate it. And hopefully we'll meet up one day. I'll come down to one of your restaurants.
Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for having me.
No, thank you.